Hello, my name is Julie, and it is time for another unhaul. One of my goals for 2025, and honestly the last couple years, has been to make my collection look more like my reading taste. Part of accomplishing that goal is getting rid of books that I don't have a strong attachment to, so that's what we're doing today. I believe I have 20 books that I have to talk about today. Almost all of these books were in the 3-star range for me. The last unhaul that I did was books that I had owned for a long time, I had not interacted with lately, and just didn't want on my shelves anymore. Almost all of these books are books that I have read within the last year. These are more recent ones that I would love to give a new home. And if you want that home to be your home, for the vast majority of these books, you can do that. Except for the couple of arcs that I'm going to be unhauling, all of the books that I am going to be talking about today are going to be put on my Pango. Pango is an app that allows you to be your own used bookstore and you can shop other people's stores. I occasionally put books on there, and I have put all of the books in this video on my Pango. So if there's any of these that you think you would like more than me, please, I would love for you to take them. Let's start out with the couple books that I can't put on Pango because they are arcs. There is one book that I have already given away. That is Restock by Vajra Chandrasekhara. This is a science fiction. I didn't really know ahead of time that this was a fix-up novel, which is a collection of short stories that partially were published in other places and then put together. It pitches itself as being a story through the ages of these two people who keep finding each other. I don't think I would have realized that these characters are supposed to be the same two people in all of these stories were it not for the synopsis telling me that. I think that this is so much more a short story collection than it is a novel told in different chapters, if that makes sense. And there were a couple that really grabbed me, and those were both at the beginning. I was really sucked in, wanting to know what happened, and because I didn't realize how short story it was, I was hoping that later in the book we were going to come back to it, and it didn't happen. Writing style, I found pretty difficult to read. I would find myself rereading the same paragraphs over and over again and like not following the text. So I've given this to one of my friends already, and I really hope he enjoys it more than I did. Then I have 3 other arcs to get rid of. All of these I am either going to give to people that I know, or I will just stock my little free libraries in my area. The first of these is The Fireborn Blade by Charlotte Bond. This is the first in a fantasy novella series. I don't know if it's going to be longer than a duology, but this first book and the second book both came out last year. Our main character is a female knight. That's not very common, and she somehow got disgraced. We don't know how, and she is going to try to get her honor back by killing a dragon. All the while, we are also getting snippets of like historical inserts from this world. The main thing being that ghosts happen a lot. So like if somebody is killed in battle or whatever, they'll like relive their last couple minutes and you'll be able to see how somebody died. I thought that this book was too short because it splits its time. This could have been a full-length novel with more story of our main character with the same amount of historical inserts. I thought that the plot twist at the end of this book was great, and that did make me curious to read the next book, but it didn't make me so curious that I requested an arc for the second book. If it's available for my library, maybe, but I don't think I felt really attached to the characters because we didn't actually spend that much time with them. Then we have another dragon book. I saw dragon books on Tor's page and I was like, give me the dragon books, and then they didn't necessarily work for me. The next one is The Sky on Fire by why do we say Jess Lyons? It's Jen Lyons. This interested me so much because the premise of it feels like a D&D campaign, and I do feel like that was a inspiration for this book a little bit. Our main character is Anarod. She lives in this world where there's these really tall mountains, and that's where most people live, and then there's the deep, which is the ground floor. Years ago, Anarod went on the run and has been living in the deep ever since, and then this group of adventurers goes looking for her and recruits her because they want her on their dangerous mission to kill the queen, who happens to be a dragon. The dragons are like the ruling class of the society, and they are going to go into the queen dragon's hoard and take her down. Super interesting premise. I think this world was fun. Like, the setting feels pretty original. There is like a magic school section of this book that felt a little bit less original. It's also queer norm, and I really enjoy the little world building aspects about that. Like how people have ornamentation on their body about different identities they have, like their gender and who they're attracted to and what they're looking for, but also things like their job and things that are important to them. Like, that was pretty cool. However, I think that this book really rushed the relationships between the characters, both romantically and not romantically. It felt like these characters had tension for the first like 100 pages, and then immediately with the romantic people, they're like, we're in love, even though they've known each other for a couple days. And the non-romantic characters, they're like, we're family. You just met. The characters were not built out enough for me personally, so I'm going to be giving this away. And the last one I have here is The Night We Lost Him by Lord Dave. I own the last thing he told me. I got that used, and so I was like, oh, I could read another book from this author. I don't know why I did that. I should be reading the book that I own. This is about our main character, Nora, whose dad was a hotel magnate, and he recently died. And it seems that he took his own life by jumping off of like the cliffside of like his favorite place on earth. And Nora's half-brother does not believe that that is actually what happened, given other things. They are trying to find out more about their dad, especially because their dad liked to keep all the different aspects of his life very separate. He kept his work separate from his family, and he kept all of his families, and interspersed we are seeing scenes from their dad's life and this relationship that he had. This isn't supposed to be like a thriller or a mystery. It's more of a suspense novel, but like, where is the suspense? I didn't find an emotional tie to this book. I didn't find like a plot tie to this book. I didn't think there really was any element that really worked for me. I think that the scenes of the relationship with the father, like in the past, were remarkably redundant, like to the point of being like, did I put my bookmark in the wrong spot? Because I swear to God, I've already read this scene. The characters going around to different people, asking them what really happened, was so frustrating because almost every single interaction that they have is, your dad didn't want you to know, so I'm not going to tell you. I hate that in mysteries and thrillers when a character is trying to investigate and zero people tell them anything. I was really let down by this one, and I think I haven't seen nearly as good of reviews of this one as her other books, so maybe I'm not in the minority. Then the rest of the books that I have to talk about were regular books, so they will be on my Pango. So many of these books are from authors that I've previously loved, and this is now my least favorite of their books. So I'm really disappointed, and these books mostly just weren't for me, but I think they might be for somebody. First up, possibly the most disappointing out of this entire pile, is Evocation by S.T. Gibson. This is the Aardvark edition. This is the first in a new paranormal fantasy series from S.T. Gibson that is about people who are sorcerers. Each of the books is going to be following primarily one of the main characters. This is supposed to be David's book. His father was like in charge of like their sorcery guild. His father has passed, and that's a good thing because he did not treat David very well. He's approaching 30. It sounds like the guy who's in charge of the sorcery guild might be stepping down, so David really wants that position. And David finds out that the family curse might actually be real, and he might die on his 30th birthday when a devil claims his soul. And the only person he knows who can help him with that is his ex-boyfriend, who is married. This book has so little to do with the fantasy plot that, like, I struggle to describe this fantasy world because I literally don't. I read this book cover to cover, and I don't know if magic is a secret in this world. The world building and the plot take such a backseat to the relationships between the characters. Even like individual character arcs take backseat to what the relationship between these characters are. In previous S.T. Gibson books, I think the relationship has been really important and the most important part of the book, but like I felt like it fit the stories in a way that does not fit this one, and it feels more Deus Ex Machina because there's no buildup of how this magic works at all. I want all these people to be happy, but like I don't really care that much. So I have no plans to continue on the series, and honestly, I knew going into this that this was getting poor reviews and that I might not like it, but I still had high hopes because I really enjoyed her other stuff. Then we have, honestly, the best book in this entire stack. This is the book that I would most recommend to other people. I, in fact, gave this a 4-star. I just know I'm never going to reread it, and honestly, I'd rather give another person a chance to read this book. And that is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I feel so bad for getting rid of this, but like I know I'm never going to reread it for a couple of reasons. One, it's a thriller. I know what the plot's going to be. Like, nothing's going to surprise me anymore. Two, I feel like I got everything thematically to get out of this book. And three, it's pretty gruesome. It didn't turn me off to the book. It just would not be something that I would find myself picking up again. This is about two fathers, Ike and Buddy Lee, and their two sons were married to each other, and both of them were disapproving of that. They were very homophobic to their sons, and then these sons were killed in a hate crime. And now these two, who both have had run-ins with the law in the past, are going to try to figure out who did this to their sons. I think that this book does such a good job of portraying social politics and racial politics, and these two grow so much throughout the book as they are going on a rampage to try to figure out who did this to their sons. This is a revenge thriller. It accomplishes what it sets out to do, and I think that's great, and I would love for somebody else to get to read this. I apologize for all the noise. I am filming at a different time than usual, and apparently this is when all the yard work happens at my apartment complex. Great. Then we have Autonomous by Annalee Newitz, who is an author that I have absolutely loved their work in the past. This is set in a future in which a couple things have happened. One, we have robots being pretty common, but they are of a lower class. We also have a lot of capitalistic things building up, so much so that a lot of humans have been put into indentured servitude. And also, intellectual property of science has become such a problem that like people don't get the medicine that they need. And this book is a cat and mouse chase of people who are trying to free information and the people who are trying to track them down. I think that the message of this book, how capitalistic ideas can encroach on freedom, so good. I really liked it. However, I thought this book was really repetitive. And also, there is a relationship between the robot and a human that I was real grossed out by. I don't know that the book is in favor of this relationship, but it seems really bad to me. I just think that this had so many good ideas and the execution was the problem. So this is my least favorite Annalee Newitz that I've read, and I've read 4 of their books, and this is the only one that I actually own physically, so why would I keep it? That's something that I've really had to tell myself lately, is I do not owe it to an author to keep a book of theirs that I did not like. And that is also the case here with Melissa Broder's Death Valley. This is a very short novel of our main character is really struggling because her dad has been on death's door for a long time now, and also her husband has some sort of chronic illness / disability that nobody can diagnose. Having all of this pressure put on her constantly has really taken a toll on her, so she has decided to take a little vacation away from it to try to work on her novel. She goes out into the middle of the desert, and the first 50 pages are her, hanging out around the hotel, and then she goes out into the desert and gets lost. And that's the rest of the book. I know that this book is, a giant metaphor for grief, and like the first 50 or so pages were working for me, but when it came to just our main character being dead tired and super thirsty, crawling through the desert, that part did not work for me as well. I thought it was way more sparse. I just didn't get a whole lot out of this one. All 3 of these authors have books that have made it on a top 10 books of the year list for me, and I'm getting rid of these books. And actually, that is the same case with In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. I read this in December. Love Light Farms was the last book I read in 2023, and it made my top 10 books of the year. It was my favorite romance of the year. I don't love a lot of romance, but I love that one, and I was so excited to find a series to get into because I just finished up a couple of romance series. This is about Evelyn St. James, who is a social media person. She features small businesses. She had a one-night stand with Beckett, who is the farmer at Love Light Farms. They later meet up when she does a spotlight on Love Light Farms, and from feeling so happy there, she realizes how dissatisfied she's become with how her job has shifted away from what she wanted. She decides to go back to Love Light Farms, and Beckett opens his house to her, and they avoid each other. I don't like Beckett at all. I think that the way that he deals with his emotions is bad. I don't think these characters get to know each other at all. These characters spend so much time apart talking about how compatible they are, and we never see it on page. There's like 2 scenes or something where these characters actually have a face-to-face conversation that isn't about their relationship. And in one of them, he's threatening bodily harm to a man who hurt his sister instead of comforting his sister. He never goes and talks to his sister about how she's feeling. He just threatens to knock someone's block off, and it's like, why? These characters don't get to know each other at all, and I'm just supposed to pretend that they like each other. I'm okay. Thanks. You're gonna notice a trend of me unhauling romance books because I have quite a few more to get through. Another disappointing author who I've given 5 stars to before, Business or Pleasure by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is again the Aardvark edition. Honestly, these 2 romances, I probably would not have picked them up from the synopsis alone. I basically just picked them up because of the author, and maybe I should not be doing that. This is about our main character, Chandler, who is a ghostwriter. She has a one-night stand with some guy, and then it turns out that that guy is her next person that she's going to be ghostwriting for. He was on a Teen Wolf type show, and his entire job since that show has essentially been doing the con circuit, and he is trying to write a book about his mental health struggles. The one-night stand was really, really bad, and Chandler is deciding to teach this guy how to please a woman. I didn't like the spicy scenes in this. They did not work for me. I didn't really particularly care about either of our main characters. I didn't really get invested in the 2 of them being together. I think there's a huge sword of Damocles over their relationship that they never really address. And also, I thought that this author had so many serious conversations that she wanted to have, and I feel like she mentioned too many. Like, if we had picked 1 or 2 of these subjects and really gone into them, I think it would have been executed better rather than just throwing them in there in a way that felt like you were just trying to check off certain boxes. And I did really like that this put in conversations about the realities of being an author and how so few authors are actually able, even when they get published, are able to only be an author. Unfortunately, another aardvark book from an author I've really liked before, we have A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams. This is about Ricky, who is a black sheep in her family. She does not want to do the family business, so she decides to set out on her own in New York and run a flower shop. I have read Flower Shop in New York a million times. Let's do something new, romance genre. And she's also in Harlem, and she is learning about the history of Harlem while she's there and trying to make tribute to that. She sees this man who she has an instant connection with. Connection or maybe lust for because he's hot, but he's mysterious. He's like weirdly mysterious, magical. She keeps running into this guy and she's like, bro, what's going on? It's technically a spoiler what his deal is, but it does have to do with the Harlem Renaissance. I thought that this book was so great for the first like 100 or 150 pages. And then as soon as these 2 get together, it felt like an entirely different book. I have read 7 Days in June and I really enjoyed it, and I liked how it mixed serious and silly to make a tone that it felt original. And in this book, it's almost like all of the serious stuff happens up top, and then the rest of the book, it's not silly, it's unserious. It felt like the personalities of the main characters absolutely went out the window as soon as they are together. Also, lots of predictable stuff when it comes to the plot versus like the first part of it felt like something fresh. I'd like to continue picking up Tia Williams. I think this particular story just was not for me, which is surprising because some of the tropes that are in this are things that I usually tend to really like. Then we have possibly my least favorite book of 2024. I did not list this as my least favorite book of 2024, but the longer I think about it, the more that I think it is. And that's The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, which is crazy because this book is so loved. It's one of the most read books on Goodreads ever, and I couldn't stand it. It's not even 200 pages long. The print is huge, and I read it in one day, and it was still a waste of my time. This is set up like a folktale where our main character is this shepherd boy in Spain. He has this dream that he needs to go to the Great Pyramids and he will find treasure there. And this whole book is him trying to get closer and closer to the pyramids and fulfill his personal legend. Thought that the writing style of this book was really boring. It's a lot of, and then the old man told him to do this, and so he did it. Like, it's not written in a way that is engaging. The whole purpose of this book is telling you to chase your dreams, but also that often you will find fulfillment where you started. This book never does anything to go further from that very small premise. And then on top of it being very trite, I think the treatment of women in this book was uncool. The whole point of this book is that everyone should go after their personal legend, but the author makes it clear that women are not people who are trying to go after their personal legends and that they should be waiting for their men. I'm not gonna do it. Sorry, I like to keep all of the classics and modern classics that I've ever read, and this is not going to be one of them. Sorry. Then we have The Kingdom of Sweets by Erica Johansson, another author I have adored in the past. The Queen of the Tearling is one of my favorite fantasy series. This is a reimagining or twist on the Nutcracker, in which Clara actually has a twin sister, Natasha, and when they were christened, Drosselmeyer told them that Clara is light and Natasha is dark, and he never expands upon what the hell that means. We get to the night where Clara goes into the Nutcracker and Natasha ends up following her, and this gets pretty dark. Honestly, goes into horror territory for a bunch of this book in a way that it was not advertised at all. I don't know who this book is for. Like, on top of it being kind of different from how it's being pitched, it also doesn't make a lot of sense. I didn't understand what this book was going for. I don't think it pushes its conversations enough, and there are like plot things that feel like they come up and never come up again, and I just was feeling wanting for this whole book. I kind of felt like, what was the point of me reading it? Then we have another book that I liked that I just don't feel strongly enough about to keep my physical copy, and that is Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. This is a sci-fi with a side of romance. There are these two different groups. There is this empire of planets, and there's this solitary planet that has its own governing body. There was a political marriage between these two, and right before a giant treaty is going to go, the person in the couple who is from the empire dies. A different person in line for the throne is put in a fast-track wedding with the widower. They are trying to navigate the political side of this. We're trying to figure out why Janen's husband was killed, and it's Kiam trying to figure out what happened to Janen, even though we, the audience, kind of know it way ahead of time. I thought this was the first in a series, but it turns out that the sequel to this is more of a standalone novel that takes place in the same world. So I was expecting this to like kick off like a big thing, but it ended up kind of concluding for the most part. I think this was good. I think it was so fun to have a science fiction book with a romance angle. I just don't think about this book. Then we have just a blemish on my record. It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I wanted to read this because I was like, everybody is talking about whether this book is the best book ever written or the worst book ever written, and I want to read it to get my own opinion, and it's in the middle. Okay? It's not the best thing. It's not the worst thing either. This is about our main character, Lily, who gets into this relationship with a guy. She's trying to make her own business, and it's about her relationship with him and how it starts turning into something she didn't expect in a bad way. And she is also reflecting on her time as a teenager when she was helping a homeless boy. There's lots of problems with this book. One, this book should not be marketed as a romance. This book treats the domestic violence plot as a spoiler, and I think that is such a tricky line to go down because for some people, like, this is such a jump scare and they don't notice the signs of it, whereas some other readers, like, would absolutely recognize from the very first chapter that this guy is bad news. I know that the relationship in this book is inspired by Colleen Hoover's actual parents, and I think that the actual domestic violence plot is done well and like helps explain to some people why people stay in relationships like this. But I think the writing otherwise is poor at best. Like, Lily trying to put up her flower shop, laughable, and absolutely took me out of the book. There's so much controversy around Colleen Hoover and her books and the stuff with the movie that I like don't want to deal with, and like this book is not good enough for me to like get involved in that. I think there's some really shitty stuff that Colleen Hoover has done, and that's another reason why I don't want this on my shelf. Then we have yet another romance. Oh my god, getting rid of all the romance on my shelf. That is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This being so obviously fan fiction of something that was so funny to me. Even as a person who's not been into Star Wars, I was like, I had to read it. And it was also set in STEM, and I am a woman in STEM. I thought it'd be cool, even though I didn't think I would like it. And you know what? I had a lot of problems when I started reading this book, and by the end, almost all of those problems were solved. I really was made uncomfortable by a lot of this book. Like the forced proximity between these characters, like externally, how like everyone's forcing them, like touchy with each other, made me uncomfortable. There wasn't really anything that really succeeded for me, but I did like how our main character, she actually succeeded in her field toward the end of the book, and I did like that. But I just don't feel the need to read another Ali Hazelwood. Everyone's so much of a fan of her. Then we have, I don't know if this is considered a YA romance or just general fiction, but this is The Heartbreak Bakery by Eric Capetta. This is a book that was sent to me, a finished copy by the publisher, and this is about our main character Sid, who does not use pronouns, went through a breakup and works at a bakery, and Sid ends up baking and putting it out at the bakery, and then everybody who eats what Sid made ends up breaking up. Sid figures out that Sid has this power to like imbue emotions into food. At the same time, Sid has a crush on a delivery person for the store. There was some stuff that I thought was really cute about this book. I love the representation, of course, and I love a book that puts food as like a forefront thing of how much love is put into food. I just think that there was some weird like structure or editing things that could have been done. Like it makes no sense for Sid to be in high school. This book can still be a YA book and have a character be in college. Sid is still in high school, not 18, going out with somebody who is in college. I think this was a cute story, but like there were some things that really took me out of it that I think were easy fixes that the author could have made, and possibly it might have been because of pressures to make this a YA book or keep it a YA book. I don't know. I think there were some really cute things in here and good messages about relationships that I would like a young person to have this. A person, well, I guess am I technically still a young person? I don't know, whatever, young adult reader. Then we have another finished copy that was sent to me by the publisher, and that is Magpie by Elizabeth Day. This is a domestic thriller-y type book about our main character, Marissa. So her and Jake knew each other, were the one immediately. They got a house together very quickly, and they're already ready to have a baby, but he loses his job, and so they can't really afford how they're living, so they end up taking on Kate, who is a lodger. Things seem to be weird with Kate, and Marissa is on to her. This book surprised me. This book had a plot twist that took me for a loop. I was under the impression that I had this book's number, that I knew everything about this book, and then it shifted and became an entirely different book, and I was really taken aback, and I was like, oh, this book is great. And then like the ending of this book, I thought it became a much more mundane book than the rest of it. This ended up being like a flat 3-star. I think if you're a domestic thriller lover, that this could be one that you could really like. This isn't something that I pick up a lot of the time. It does what it sets out to do and nothing more. And the last book I have to talk about is another 5-star author, favorite book of the year author who disappointed me, and that is Ashley Winstead's Midnight is the Darkest Hour. I think this is like by far her lowest rated book, and I know why. This book is about our main character who is a librarian, and there's some killer that is supposed to be around town, and people think it has to do with this local legend, and she and someone from her past are trying to investigate the killing. This synopsis absolutely removes one of the most important things about this book, and I thought that was a really weird choice. I did not really care for our main character or the love interest particularly. I didn't like the love interest. I didn't like that this book was mostly like trying to go in a paranormal direction, but like I know that it's not going to end up in a paranormal direction, so like, why is this happening? I think that the themes around like religion and control were not executed to their fullest. Kind of felt like, oh, we're gonna have one confrontation and that's gonna be enough, and I know that Ashley Winstead can do better than that. So I'm kind of glad I didn't necessarily splurge on a really nice copy of this, because I thought about it and have had for her previous books. So this one was not for me. I'm still going to be reading This Book Will Bury Me in 2025 because it sounds amazing. This one, honestly, the premise did not excite me. I just read it because it was her book, and I think I need to stop doing that with authors. Hey, it's several days later, I'm doing some night shooting, and I actually found a couple more books at my dad's place that I do want to get rid of as well. So we've got even more books to talk about. The first of these is The Atlas Six by Olive Blake. This is about a secret society that is like a magical extension of the Library of Alexandria. These 6 20-somethings are chosen to do this magical competition, and they don't really know why or what the magic is or what the prize is if they win. There's just not a lot of information given to you as the reader. It's mostly vibes and like a bunch of different characters interacting with each other and being hot, smart people in a house locked in together. In the moment, I did like this book, but the longer I sat with it, the less it stayed with me. I could not tell you basically anything that happens in this book. I don't think the magic is very well developed, and I'm a person who needs a little bit of that. Besides that, the reviews for the sequels of this have been abysmal, and I wasn't even sure I wanted to continue in this if those had gotten good reviews. So I would gladly pass this off. This is also, I think this is the Target edition, so this is what Under the Dust Jacket looks like, but if there's somebody who really wants to read Olive Blake or already really loves her and needs a copy, I would love this to be with somebody who her writing is for them, because I don't think it's for me. Next up, we have one of the books that I bought because of Book Talk. I don't even have a TikTok, but this is one of the books that Book Talk has been recommending everywhere, and I thought maybe I could trust it. And I've learned that is not the case anymore. But this is A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a retelling of Hades and Persephone. Hades owns a casino or whatever, and Persephone is a reporter. Wow, the fact that I'm remembering anything about this book is shocking. And of course, they're going to be in love with each other. I think the fantasy of this book is laughable. As far as a Hades and Persephone retelling goes, because that already comes with a lot of problems, the romance wasn't that bad. Everything around this just felt like a vessel to get those scenes out. I didn't feel like these characters were developed. I didn't feel like the world was trying to be developed or anything. This is a book for an entirely different person than I am, and I just don't know why I've hung on to this book after not liking it. Then we have a book I actually did give a pretty good review to, and that is The Beauty of Darkness by Mary E. Pearson. This is an OG booktube series, The Kiss of Deception. I would have read it when I was probably early high school, and it took me by surprise. Like, I didn't think it was going to be for me, and then it really elevated my opinions of it. The first book is about our main character, Leah, who is a princess who's being married off to a prince, and she doesn't want to do that, so she ends up running away and starting her life in a small town. And there are 2 boys that start pursuing her. And we don't know which one is which, but we do know that one of them is the prince she was supposed to marry, and one of them is an assassin sent to kill her. It was a little bit more than the sum of its parts. And the second book, I really enjoyed as well. And then this book, I bought basically on its release day, and then did not read for several years. While I think it was still a pretty good conclusion to the series from my memory, why do I own this really thick book of a YA series that I'm not gonna really be thinking about anymore? This is another case of me owning the least favorite book in a series. This series isn't a favorite of mine anymore, so I have no intention of going out and buying the first and second books in the series, so it's gonna go. And the last book I'm going to be getting rid of is mostly because I don't remember a lot about it, and that is Exit West by Mohsin Hamid. Oh, this still has a bookmark in it. See, I've been doing my receipt thing for a long time. I love doing a receipt as my bookmark. I was probably in 9th or 10th grade when I read this book. This is a contemporary, I think it has a little bit of a speculative element about this couple who is falling in love, but their country is falling apart. I don't believe the country is ever named. At the brink of this revolution and their city being bombed and falling apart, They are trying to get out of there, and that puts a strain on their relationship to one another. And I don't have a lot of memories of this book. And I think honestly, I probably was a little bit too young when I read this to like fully get the whole thing. This book doesn't always give you all the answers, and that did not work for me at the time. I think if I read this now, maybe I'd like it more. But like, given that this was a book that I read a long time ago and I didn't have strong feelings about it, I think life is too short to return to it, so I'd rather give it to somebody who is going to appreciate it when they read it the first time. That's all the extra books I have, so past me can do the outro. Those are all the books that I have to talk about today. If you would like to have any of the books, except for the first 4 books that I talked about, you can go on my Pango right now and get those. Anything that does not get sold for my Pango is going to be going to my used bookstore, and I'll trade for new books. But I would love to know what books you have unhauled lately. Were they books that you hated, or were they books that you just know you're never gonna return to? But thank you so much for watching. If you would like to follow me anywhere, you can find me at the link in the description. And if you would like to subscribe, I'd love to have you around. And as always, I will see you in the next one.